Hello and welcome to another episode, a special episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele, and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch this funny little show. Alright, so real quick, let's do a week in Bryan. Not much. I know that doesn't sound right, and actually that's not even true. I got to run my very miniature heavy Dungeons and Dragons game down in Indianapolis called the Knotted Wheel. That's the name of the chronicle. And I hope they had a good time. They got into a couple of old school fights with some old school critters, and then they got into some fights with some new critters, and they fell in love with a miniature that technically I had printed and painted and everything to be bad guys, but just nothing ever survives contact with the players. They ended up begrudgingly befriending one of the factions of bad guys in this dungeon. And so the Dire Weasel cavalry from the Kobold clan, so kobolds riding dire weasels, when I put them on the board and basically gave them the opportunity to, are they going to attack? Are you going to try and let them do their job? That sort of thing. When they saw them, the entire game came screeching to a halt for a good 10 minutes while everybody wowed and loved and laughed and giggled and oh my god, I want to hug his face, these little weasel riders. So I guess kobolds riding dire weasels is the new hotness in my world. Super weird. But we had a good time. Ended on a particularly good note. They just learned that there are not one but two dragons in the dungeon. A pair of dragon brothers. So we will see what they do with that information next time we get to play. Let's see, what else? Been playing a lot of video games. Actually been doing a lot of video games for racking up hours to play video games for charity, for the Blood Cancer Awareness Month. I think I'm up to about 10 hours logged so far out of the 30. I got to get 30 before the end of September, which is not going to be hard. I play to de-stress and so forth. So, been playing a lot of Sea of Thieves. Actually get to play some Minecraft Dungeons with my son the other day. I forgot how much I love that goofy little game. But yeah, so that's really all the gaming that I've gotten in. Again, it's been a lot of work. Speaking of work, I haven't gotten the okay to tell you what it is yet, but I'm diving in on a particularly important and very big Power Rangers source book. So I went from Power Rangers to Power Rangers. That doesn't happen very often. Normally they have me bounce around between the titles. But this became pressing, and it just made sense to go that route. So very happy with that. That's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm making good headway on it. It's unlike a lot of projects that sometimes drag. This one hit the ground running and just seems to be staying at that steady pace. Still about halfway done with my short story for Shadowrun. I need to just basically take a couple days on a weekend or something and smash out the rest of it. Progress continues on Warzone stuff, Warzone Eternal. Actually, some good behind the scenes stuff took place this last week. Hoping to get a little more progress on that soon. Actually, I'm kind of hoping that here pretty soon, Alex and I might be able to share a little bit of some of the stuff we're doing. I know that we don't want to let the proverbial cat out of the bag too soon, because that was honestly part of the issue with the first Kickstarter, is that there was almost too much time between letting people know this awesome new project and the project actually launching. So I think we probably are going to hold our cards a little closer to our chest this time. until it gets closer to the actual launch. But uh, rest assured, there's some very, very cool stuff that is happening behind the scenes. Um, Painting commission, just finished up a very cool commission for um, my friend Peter Atkinson, the CEO over at Gen Con. He made a call out that he needed some extra D&D minis, or D&D style minis, like adventures and things. So I spent the last couple weeks in my spare time painting up a bevy of different cool adventurers and stuff for him to use. So hopefully, I'm gonna mail that out tomorrow, and we'll see. Hopefully, he likes the gifty. He has done a lot for me in the past, so I can't. You know, this is a drop in the bucket of repaying his niceties. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that sent out. Um, that's really it. I mean, it's been a great week as far as like personally. Kids are doing well in school. Natalie's doing. She's working on an amazing art piece for a we can't name him publicly Hollywood person until the project is done. Um, but it's things are moving along here in the old Steele household. Uh, but there's always room for more coolness, which is why bringing us to today's topic. So today, if you checked out the thumbnail, I said Q&A with a gamer #1. Dun dun dun. So what you're about ready to watch is a separate clip that we recorded with myself and a gamer, someone who actually is out in the universe playing one of the games that I write, design, and develop. And in one of our Discord channels over at Renegade Games, a conversation popped up where this gentleman that's part of the episode today, the co-star, if you will, James asked. He had a bevy of questions and basically was like, I want to ask you some stuff about how to help me GM and whatnot with Essence 20, and it sparked this idea that there's probably a lot of people out there that have either the same questions, similar questions, or perhaps might just want to see a non-scripted interaction between a gamer and a professional, someone who designs and develops the game that they're playing. And so I talked it over with my wife. I asked a couple of my friends, is this something that anybody would want to watch? And almost universally, everybody said, no, that would be a really cool kind of breath of fresh air for the channel. And so rather than an unboxing or me talking about a topic or anything, I reached out to James and said, hey, how would you like to have a recorded Q&A that could help other gamers out in the world? So, thus, Q&A with a gamer #1 was born, which you're going to watch here in just a couple minutes. My goal is to turn this into kind of a series within the series. Find more gamers that want to talk, that want to ask questions. Find maybe other people, other aspects. I know I'm lining up one of the Renegade demo staff, people who ran Essence 20 for multitudes of people over at Gen Con and some of the other shows. So we'll see how this comes together and how this is received by you, the fans. But without further ado, let's go ahead and pop into that clip and have our first Q&A with a gamer. All right. Hello, everybody. I know you just saw me, but now you are seeing me with another friendly face. This is James Bushby from a completely different part of the world, but a part that I particularly love. Now, what part of the UK are you from?
So I live in Milton Keynes. I'm kind of like Buckinghamshire kind of area.
Okay.
For anybody that knows where that is, if you don't, there's a fun geography thing for you.
Fantastic. You guys can go on Google Maps and try and find him. All right, so basically, I already explained what we were doing here today, but for quick recap, in case somebody was just kind of like spinning through the video, James here is an avid Essence 20 gamer. Has recently started running his own game. He's an avid Essence 20 GM, and some questions came up in our Discord, the Renegade Games Discord channel that I spend an hour a day on, enjoying the company of the Discord Rangers and the Discordicons. I don't have one for the G.I. Joe because I don't spend that much time over there. That's more Ryan's forte. But James was having some questions pop up, and it kind of lit a fire in my brain that said, why don't we ask these questions and discuss them and talk about it in an more open format? And that way maybe some, while it's not as definitive as like putting an answer in a FAQ or in a RADA or anything, it's at least something that you guys can maybe watch and get some information out of in the future. Or something for us to build on down the road. Just thought it was kind of a cool concept to talk to the people playing the games. Actually, I spend a lot of time talking about how they get made and how much I like to play, and I like to talk about the times that I've got to watch other people play. Now let's talk about someone who's actually playing, and hopefully getting the enjoyment out of it that we're hoping. That's the whole goal. I didn't vet this guy very well, so if James comes out swinging, you guys know where to find him in Milfordshire. I think that's what you said. Am I close?
You amalgamated two into one, but you've done better than some people. I'll give you a point for it.
Especially if I'm sending people after you, you're like, no, that's fine. That's
yeah. Oh yeah, Milfordshire, absolutely, yeah.
So let's tell the professional nerd fans, the viewers, a little bit about yourself.
So I have been playing sort of tabletop games now. I still feel I'm quite young. I still feel like I'm a rookie in this kind of thing, because I've only been playing for 2.5 years. Like in comparison to a lot of the Discord Rangers you talk about who've been playing for years and years. I started playing right around when we got into lockdown because of the general thing that's going on still. I was in just a group chat on Twitter about something completely different, and one of the guys in there was like, in order to stay sane while we're locked down, I do this to play. And I'm like, I've never played before, really. I'd love to play. Got a group and just fell in love with the group and in love with the idea of the game and everything like that. It took me a little while to get my head around the fact that, oh, so I can be anything that I want. I can do anything here. Cool.
That's awesome.
And and then after a while it was like, so our group rotates. So rather than having like a forever GM, we play twice a week. We've done like 5e, we do Call of Cthulhu, we've done Space Hack, which is another like system that we've played around for, and we kind of rotate around and everyone has a go. And as we were building up to it, I was like, oh, well, you know what? I kind of feel like we've played for 2 years now. I would like to have I don't know if I'll be any good. Don't know how I'd go about doing any of it, but I'd love to have a go at something. And then I found Renegade because I heard about the Transformers one. So I looked into that, and then obviously Power Rangers came out first. I got that to learn the system. I was like, you know what? I think I know enough here that I can plan a game out. Yeah. And then that rapidly went from I can plan a game out to I can plan a campaign to I have planned levels 1 to 20. I have all sorts of, I have this sprawling map, and I'm there like, I do not know how I'm going to achieve any of this, but if my players, if everyone wants to give me a chance, we'll do it. And everyone did, and it became my turn. And yeah, gradually it's like I feel it's going okay. They think it's going well. I'm like, oh, I feel like I could be better. Hence why we're here now.
Well, I like the fact that talking to veteran gamers, people who've been down in the trenches for 20 plus years. I like the fact that you are relatively new to gaming. And I say relatively because 2 years is still, especially playing twice a week, that's a lot of gaming. That's more than some people get in quite a bit of time. But I like the fact that it means that you're looking at this as someone who is not system jaded. You're looking at someone has had a chance. It sounds like your group does kind of spread the love. You played the different systems and things like that. And one of the hardest things to do is to try and show somebody a new system if all they've done just religiously as one thing. And so it's very cool that you guys branched out and played those different games and whatnot. And then I'm kind of particularly proud that you guys landed on Essence 20 for at least one of them. That's cool.
Yeah, it's you hear a lot of it, like and again, not wanting to come back to other people who have said other things, but in the Discord there have been quite a few people who are like, I'd love to get my group to play this, but they're steadfast on only ever playing 5e, which is fine if that's what your choice is.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. Absolutely no problem with that. But from my mind, and I think for the mind of everyone that I play with, is cool, new systems, new ways to do things, new ways to build characters. So you could, in theory, take the same character that you play every time, but it's got to be different because there are different rules and there's different ways around it. And
oh, cool. Okay.
That creativity just really, really appeals to, I think, kind of all of us.
Yeah, I dig that. One of the things that I'm really hoping, the latter half of this year is going to be very important for Essence 20. There are several releases. The Transformers is going to be out physically very, very soon. I know there are people that are starting to apparently get not shipping notices, but basically notices to be notices.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, watch your email, something's coming soon. So I know that's going to be out very shortly. And once that book gets out physically, that means all three of the action adventure initial settings are out in the wild. I'll be very interested to start hearing about people taking their characters from one setting to the next, just to kind of see where they lie. I mean, we can only see so much in playtest.
Yeah.
And there's a long-standing thing that no game survives untouched once the players get their hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be interested to see in how the crossovers, as that starts to unfold, just how gnarly that can get. If you have one guy that's like, I stopped playing, G.I. Joes because they're just not as good as Transformers. Now that's something that I need to look at and find out, is it just not as good as because of their setting? Mm-hmm. Or is it more along the lines of, you're just tired of being the only little meatbag in a group full of giant robots? Is it a personal thing or is it a system thing? So yeah, the next I would say the next 6 months or so are going to be very important for us to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, we know of the things that you've dropped in as teasers. This and the games that we can play for. Question which of these is true, and everything just gets kind of the brain juices going, just thinking, what about this, or what about this? And I know part of the charm for the system for a lot of it is, hey, if you want to run a G.I. Joe and Power Rangers campaign, sure. If you want to run a Power Rangers and Transformers campaign, sure. If you just want to run one, that's also possible. And kind of, again, it's just I use this phrase so much, the potential for what you can do is almost endless. It's great.
When Scott, basically the owner of Renegade, when Scott came forward and was like, this is what we're doing, I was completely gobsmacked. I was just like, oh my God, this is gonna be the best thing ever. But then reality set in shortly thereafter and was like, how are we gonna do this? like this is a lot. And Elisa put together a really good, a very good team full of a lot of very very smart designer type people. I'd like to include myself in that number.
Yeah.
But several meetings into the system and us figuring out what we wanted to do, every time we ran into some kind of hiccup or a speed bump, someone on that team of like 12 people would raise their hand in the meeting and go, hey, I think this might be a way to work around this. And it really did come together real well. And I'm hoping that as new licenses get introduced, My Little Pony's coming out soon. While that is not exactly an action adventure style thing, it can be. And I think that's going to be one of the things to watch, is to see how that, see how people take that. Are they only playing it for itself, or are they bringing Zords to Equestria? How are we gonna see that goes? And then when new licenses come down the pipe, I know that there are some things that Scott is looking at. I don't know legality, I don't know the process involved. I just know that there's some things that they are definitely trying to bring over to Essence 20 that would be awesome. Again, every time, even if it's something that I don't necessarily care about, like as the license itself, it's something that I want to see. I want to see how it gets executed and what that does for the completely E20 family, players and everything involved. Just kind of see where that goes.
Yeah, what you can stretch, what you can bring in theory, can only make the game better, can only open more options for everybody. So yeah, go for it, do it.
Exactly. All right, let's get to these questions. So to let everybody know, James actually put together a couple of questions that were burning on his mind, and now we're gonna probably turn some of those into deeper discussions, but rather than just giving a bunch of answers over an email, we're going to talk about them. And this is some of these questions. Hopefully you will find useful answers to, and as viewers, maybe you'll take home some of this information and bring it to your own games, even system agnostic, just in general, some of the concepts that we're talking about. All right, so number one.
Not starting at the beginning, because where's the fun in that? Let's start right in the middle of everything.
I gotta change my script.
I just think for a lot of it, it's like, oh, what about setting up this? What about setting up that? The first question I went with was what I felt was the biggest thing that I needed to work on, which is combat, and making a combat encounter, I think, fulfilling for everyone is how I put it in, because for a moment, I think the combat system is very good. There are a lot of options in terms of what you can do for the threats, what you can put people up against, what the characters are able to do with their abilities and everything like that. And the concern that I have with my game specifically is it feels very much just like everybody is stood in a line waiting to take their turn to hit the thing. And I want to be able to do more with that.
Okay. I think the best, and this is not even an Essence 20 thing, one of the best systems for combat, in my opinion, was the old version of a role-playing game called 7th Sea. 7th Sea was a pirate role-playing game. It was very, very cool. I think it was AEG that put it out. It was a very cool setting, an awesome world. It had magic, but it was lighter on magic. It wasn't like, you didn't get very many straight up sorcerers. You might have somebody that can cast weather rituals or something, or a dude who can talk to animals. But for the most part, it was a game about swashbuckling. And when you got into a combat situation, it wasn't so nitty gritty where it was like, I move 8 feet and I have 2 feet movement left. It was more like, if you could describe what you were doing to get to what you wanted to fight, you could jump over tables and swing on the chandelier, and all of that was just kind of figurative. And then when it came to the actual fighting, it was the mechanics of, I roll my mechanic to hit this guy and whatnot. But because of not having to necessarily worry about every single tiny little itty bitty detail of all of the NPCs. If you're on a boat full of people, the GM would just basically say, okay, there are other fights going on around you. And you just leave it at that. You focus on what your character is doing at that time. You kind of shine the spotlight on this person's actions, and rather than zooming all the way out and taking everyone into consideration until you need to, is you try to make every single moment on that initiative tracker, whatever your initiative order is, every single step you have something important. Even if it's, like you said, people are just lining up waiting to hit the bad guy, is insert, if one guy's at, Yellow Ranger is at initiative 12 and Green Ranger is at initiative 9, on like that 11-10 step, you include something cinematic. You basically have one of the NPCs, somebody off to the side fall is in a Power Ranger game. You might have somebody on initiative 10. You look whoever has the highest alertness and go, "Hey, Red Ranger, you notice that there's a kid locked in a car on the side of the street." And then you just move on to the next thing. You give them that little bit of seed. They might not do anything with it. They might go, okay, so sorry, Junior, I got to deal with the monster. But it probably, because you've taken the time out of your combat sequence to let them know that something has changed, something is different, as players, their curiosity is going to get them, and they're going to probably maybe take that, encourage the conversation. Yellow Ranger looks at Green Ranger and says, "Hey, I'm going to go help the kid. You take care of the putties." It becomes more of a flowing thing, and then maybe you can learn about your players. That yellow Ranger who's normally just a Cuisinart, like just kills everybody, murders, triple strike, death, ninja power, everything, just murders them like nobody's business. And then you give them an opportunity to save a kid, and they go, "All right, you guys handle this. I don't care that I'm the meat, the meat grinder. I need to go do this." Now for future reference that player and that character that they are playing, more than likely, that's not to like, it can be exploited, but more along the lines of, where your plots can go in a way to keep them. Like if you want to keep them in a certain line, all you have to do is be like, "All right, hey, there's a monster rampaging and there's a school bus, and now your Yellow Ranger is probably going to drop everything to go help, because they've set precedent that they're probably going to be involved with that sort of thing." But then if you've got players that are not combat monsters, this is always any kind of team-based game or party-based game, you always run into the situation where one guy builds the guy who can kill everybody, and then there's the opposite side of the spectrum where there's the person that's like, "No, I don't really want combat ever. I would rather pick all the locks and just hide." If you've got something like that, you always try and make sure that there's something in a scene that everyone can try and excel at. And if you've got the super sneaky, super lockpicky, something like that, then that's maybe where you introduce they see a couple of putties off to the side in this combat. They're not really part of the combat, but they just ducked inside of a building and shut the doors behind them. Maybe that your sneaky Ranger might want to go investigate that, use some of those skills. There's nothing that says that your combat scene doesn't necessarily have to have all combat actions.
Yeah.
You can totally grab people out of it and have them go do other important things. If you got your super science nerd, you could give them a ticking time bomb. Literally, you give them, there's a goofy putty built, it's got like the Predator language ticking down. They don't know what the hell's going on, but give them that on their turn. They spend their actions trying to fix it. You can find ways of putting in things that aren't just clobbering into the combat, and more often than not, the players will pick up on it. If you have players that do just kind of look at the things that aren't beating bad guys and go, we'll deal with it later, then that's maybe when you, I don't want to say punish them, but you do remind them that certain things have, consequences. Not to get grisly, but like if that kid who was locked in the backseat of the car maybe have on turn 3 or 4 that they've ignored the thing, have one of the attacks from the monster that misses, that it hits nearby the car. Maybe don't kill the kid. That's a bit much, but like remind, and then you have the kid, maybe the glass shatters in the windshield or something, and they can hear the kid, yelling out for their mom. Like ham it up and be like, all right, guys, especially if this is their second reminder, they're probably going to go, someone should go save the kid.
The thing that I've quite liked about it, and again, solely talking about just my own experiences on my group here, is how they seem to have latched onto the as I said, the rules of engagement, like the rules of being the thing, never escalate something unless
Awesome.
unless someone escalates it for you. And there have been occasions where I've put things in front of them and several of them have gone, well, they haven't done anything yet, so I can't do anything yet. And I'm sat here as a GM being like, no, it's fine. Their existence is a thing that is an escalation. You are fine to carry on and do it. We've run, so when I ran the story from the core rulebook, can we talk about that without spoilers? Is that a thing?
If it's in the core rulebook, so okay, if you have not played that adventure, then you may want to maybe fast forward a couple minutes. But other than that, it's in the core rulebook. People who are playing Essence 20, they probably have access to it. So
the bit with the Mongo Pie.
Okay.
I structured that as an unknown training exercise for my lot, where instead of them being aware that they were going into a hollow thing, they were teleported because there was something they needed to deal with. And it was a rescue situation in an abandoned building. And I quite liked that. I think it was my Black Ranger. It was very much like, people are in trouble. You lot have got this. I'm going to go over there.
See, that's fantastic.
And it fit with like the origins and the stuff that he built for his character. All of it was great. And I think the more you've been talking about it, the more I've been sat here thinking, you know what I've done? I've gone away from that. And I've just basically just put a meech thing in front of them and gone, hit this. And maybe, I think there is the thing in there of like, I know what I'm planning to do tomorrow in our game session as we're recording this, and I have just thought of several things that I can do within that. So if any of my group are watching this, this is going to
come out. This is going to come out after your session.
So When you watch this back, this is when I worked out what I was going to
do. This is that dawning moment.
Yes, this was it. So okay, awesome. That's good. Yeah. Question 2. Okay, so let's move on. What felt like a natural progression in my thinking here. How do you handle equipment and upgrades? Because, and we've the books talk about this, we have talked about this, we've like exchanged conversations about this. This isn't like something like 5e where you raid a dungeon and you come away with, here are 3 potions of healing, a pole of extending, and Sir Ethelthrift the 47th long sword that produces rabbits. You don't get that kind of thing here. And like my rangers, they have their power weapons. I'm ramping everything up as don't do what I do, viewers, because I changed the rules ever so slightly and I gave them Zords earlier and had to work everything out, which Bryan very kindly doesn't tell me off about. But what I wanted to do is kind of ramp everything up. So we introduced rangers, and then we introduced weapons, and then we do Zords, and then row. Okay. And there's going to come to a point where like, right, I've introduced everything that I possibly can, and we're level 4, but I kind of feel like I want to reward them. I want to put things in place where if they want to upgrade things or do things, they can do it. Discuss.
So the equipment section of Essence 20 is kind of one of my personal bugbears. Um, it was originally, the concept was to make it as absolutely painstakingly easy as possible. And GI Joe, when that system became more developed, and we realized that, okay, Power Rangers are effectively superheroes, and they have special powers, and they get Zords. Transformers are their own vehicles, and they're already tougher, cooler, as far as like as beings, than a regular person. So GI Joe needed something to get that sort of leg up over everybody else,
Yeah.
and that fell into the equipment. That fell to basically why we ended up with an upgrade system, why the vehicles are a little crunchier than like when you look at vehicle combat and things like that. There's a few more moving parts, and it really came down to that GI Joe needed a leg up on that kind of thing. And because these are games, like you said, it isn't about looting. You're not going to see Power Rangers checking through the pockets of, they knock Finster out and he either teleports somewhere else, or he dies in a shower of sparks and smoke. You don't see very many Power Rangers pilfering the pockets of monsters.
Yeah, it's generally not the hero behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, in GI Joe you might see it a little more often because you are again, repurposing equipment, maybe using their clothes as a disguise. There is some of that, but for the most part, it's not about. I look at my rifle that I've got, and I look at the thing that the Cobra Trooper has, and I go, I'll stay with this. This is the one that I've built for me and my stats, and I don't need their fancy thing unless it's something special. As far as, especially in Power Rangers, as you get higher in role level and kind of the threats increase and stuff, a lot of the equipment starts to seem, I don't want to say lackluster, but it starts to seem very normal. I've got my Power X, I've got my Power X, and yeah, you can get more powers and more perks to make you using it cooler. Which is where Power Rangers really kind of excels, is to make the character cooler with the item itself. There is still room to come up with special stuff that you could make that, instead of it being that basic everyday Power Axe over and over and over again, is that maybe like at level 10, have your alpha or your Zordon friend or Circuit or whoever's helping your team, or maybe just your Blue Ranger comes up with something, goes, whoa, I figured this out. And you can, augment that weapon, change it, maybe add a special trait to it, or, make something, kind of what we did with the Green Rangers with their unique weapon, is that maybe as a reward for reaching level 10, or a story-based reward, if they beat, we'll go back to Finster, they clean Finster's clock, and this place that they're in, there's a bunch of, unique upgrades, things that no one would have ever thought about this, and unique to the point where it's like not even a weapon trait, where like, we'll do the Power Axe, the Power Axe still has that blaster mode, but this upgrade allows it to, be used as a grappling hook, or maybe something that is not even combat based. When you have your power weapon manifested, it is impossible for you to be surprised. Like your weapon has a danger sense on it. You can absolutely come up with, you could tie a special perk. Find one of those perks that you're like, no one ever takes this, because it's not super combat-y, and you turn it into an upgrade. While you've got your Power Axe out, you can play your Power Axe in your garage band or whatever. I'm far reaching there, but like basically, the upgrade system allows you to constantly add just combat-based stuff, and I think one of the best ways to reward the players for as far as their equipment goes, is give them things that they can't just do straight out of the box. Because if they can read the equipment section and go, all right, I'll do that next level,
that's not going to be much of a surprise or a benefit to them but when you look at them and go, hey, Finster's Workshop has these 5 weird upgrade modules in it, and you guys get to choose where they go. That's going to be more important to them, even though it's not combat based, because it's going to be unique. It's going to be something that they can't do on their own, and you can lean into it and make it be part of the plot. Maybe all of these things, they look at these and look at them and go, huh, they all seem to be made from the same strange crystal-based alien technology. And then one guy goes, can I make like a history check or some kind of culture check? And they go, well, they're Horathi in make. And they go, wait, what? What's a Horathi? And the one guy goes, all right, we got to go back to the command center and look up what these dudes are. And now you've opened up a completely new chapter based off of the thing that maybe gives them +1 defense. Something that's super minor, nothing that's like game breaking or anything, but you've now seeded them with ideas. And it also gives you something that if you're on a slow, if you're kind of a slow plot day, you can use their equipment upgrades. Human scientists are always looking for alien tech. That's always a gimme. Emigrant can always be running around trying to try and grab stuff. Or in the case of some of them, you don't have access to this yet because the book's not out. But some old Eltarian tech, that might be somewhat. You might look at someone and go, okay, this is Alpha 64 is apparently a big fan of the Nintendo. Alpha 64 is going to change the fabric of your morpher, and instead of a blade blaster, you get an Eltarian laser pistol. And if that's what you want, you can alter how their equipment goes. Maybe not necessarily scaling things up. You might not have to, but it also could. You could give them an opportunity, especially in like a crossover game. That Green Ranger goes, man, I don't really want a blade blaster, but I could use a Cybertronian null ray. That would be okay. I could grab one of those, and then you just have your techie, make the various checks. The requisition rolls to get it is basically them altering how the morpher taps into things, and you hand wave it in and make them happy.
Okay.
That make any sense at all? Or I
no, it did. There were elements of that I think I'd already got in, so that based on how my campaign is planned to achieve, and I won't say more than that because spoilers. But yeah, there's bits in that built in. I said the concern that I always had was, should I be giving them more things to do? Should I be rewarding them with more things? And what you've just said kind of helps ways to do that without doing anything big. Like, it doesn't have to be big, flashy, massive. Oh, congratulations, you've just unlocked a brand new cannon that the 6 of you, or however many Rangers may operate. Instead, it can just be, here's a thing you found, it does this. Cool.
Yeah, and it becomes a point of pride for the characters that do spend those skills on their tech things to be able to figure stuff out. And if you see one of your players that is kind of maybe, I don't want to say dragging behind in a particular aspect of things, like, they really built the stealthiest character ever. Like, they wanted this guy to be House Burglar 101, and then they're in a Power Rangers game and they go, we're in brightly colored spandex, we don't sneak anywhere. Then maybe that's the time that you give that person something cool that's based off of Phantom Ranger tech that gives them the opportunity to go invisible during combat. Or that they can replace one of their attacks with their infiltration skill instead of their combat skill for one round. Something along those lines. Basically lean into them, so that way they feel like they're getting a little more out of their character without you looking at them and saying, hey, you're never going to sneak anywhere. You're brightly colored. You're a neon ranger. I'm sorry, but maybe this could be a cool way for you to, once per scene, they can go into predatorflage and use infiltration instead of finesse to fight somebody.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
That's actually a really good idea.
I mean, I'm kind of stealing a little bit from the Phantom Ranger, but
that's fine. I'm gonna steal from that, because that will work. Okay. See, we're already helping. It's already going really.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, 3.
Yes.
And we've put this off long enough. It's everyone's favorite thing to talk about, specifically with Power Rangers games, because it's Zords. And so I don't think I've necessarily had, and I don't want to say a problem, I don't think I've had the questions around this that a lot of other people have. We've still had a lot of questions related to it, but obviously there is the rules in number of dice roll to sort the number of combat rounds before a Zord is able to be summoned.
Okay.
And then another roll for spoilers, how you form the mega form once the Zords have been there. But it's fine, that's not spoilers, because it is spoilers, but it's not spoilers for my lot, because again, this will come out after we've done what we're doing on Monday.
Gotcha. Okay.
Not that I'm planning on doing anything related to this on Monday. And it is that whole kind of, how do you go, how do you say it? Now, my approach was to sort of twist it around a little bit. Like, okay, you do the roll, and the roll is, so you roll initiative and then you roll to summon your Zord, and the number for your Zord is how many combat rounds before your Zord can be summoned. And the point of it is, from my mind, is getting my Rangers, because what they have generally done is just absolutely laid waste to everything that I've put in front of them within about 2 rounds. They thought, when we did the glutton for punishment thing, they thought a threat from that, shot it with the power blaster, it missed its attack. They shot it with the power blaster again and it died. And I built that as like a nice big climactic end of level fight. And it was like, cool, what do I do now? We'll come back to that sentiment later. What I want for them is to get them into the thing of, okay, you are aware of the fact that once you defeat this, it's going to get bigger. Your big things aren't going to be available for 4 turns. What do you do if you beat it in 2? And that's the kind of thing I'm trying to build into. Is that good? Is that bad? What do you think?
The biggest thing that I've been leaning in on, having now watched several people play at conventions, and then our own playtest games and such, is that very similar to what you said about rolling that die and seeing that that's almost like the minimum amount of time that this conflict has to progress, rather than necessarily saying that. So peek behind the curtain. The reason why those numbers were there originally were twofold. The first one was basically to stop a Power Ranger from just going to vehicle combat against anybody, especially in a crossover game, because that's supposed to be like kind of the G.I. Joe's benefit, is that they get to requisition their vehicles and just have them, so there was a little bit of a kind of a fairness factor that we wanted to put in for these Zords, because the Zords are vehicles, but they're also scarier than normal vehicles. They've got their own attacks, they've got scaling powers, they've got, as the more source books come out, they get shields, they get all these other things that can really tip the scales as just a critter. And so what we had to do is we tried to figure out basically a way for Power Rangers had to fight. You have to do that escalation. You have to do the cinematic. We're on foot for a little bit. We are in vehicles for sometimes a second, and then into the big monster based off of meeting the big monster. What we ended up doing is I sat, and I'm gonna point out my nerddom. I counted how many seconds roughly it takes for when they call the Zords. That cinematic, the Sabretooth running through the woods, yeah. Collectively, that was about 18 seconds worth of video altogether. that is 3 combat rounds. So if you look at the average die roll, it comes to roughly 3 combat rounds that you have to wait. So it was all cinematic in build. And then again, players got a hold of it and they were like, we kill the monsters way before that happens. What I say is the best thing to do is that if you really want your Zords to be part of the fight, like Zord fight, is have them use the optional story point rule. I'm going to spend a story point to have something useful happen right now, and something useful happening right now is my Zord showing up right now. So at the end of the turn, my Zord shows up, and I have it for the scene. If it's really they desperately need it, they want to be that part of the combat. You don't want them just standing around waiting for their Zords. You remind them that a story point can be used to call upon any useful object, and a Zord is definitely a useful object. It kind of bends itself to, hey, that sort of thing. Let's get us into the Zords if you need them. The other thing to do is that even if they beat up all the, like they've called the Zords are on the way, there's still 3 more rounds or 4 more rounds, bad die roll, 5 more rounds. 5 rounds is only 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Once the bad guys are dead or defeated, pull them out of combat rounds. 30 seconds is like that in real life actions. So you basically look at your Rangers and go, okay, your Zords are on the way, the putties are defeated, the monster has just fallen down, and Rita is yelling about making her monster grow. That hasn't happened yet. Or that's what you do, is you have the moment, that momentary cinematic thing where the monster gets real big, and the actual process of Rita throwing the wand, the thing, or Clank and Orbis attaching the thing to the butt, whatever. And that process is what takes up that time for the Zords to show up. So by the time he is big, they have their Zords, and then now they make that choice whether or not they want to, do we combine? Do we fight him as Zords? Because even then, I know a lot of people are like, the action economy in Zords, it's just better to run around as, Zords to fight a big monster.
Yeah.
Depending on the big monster, they will choose that like the first time that one of your Zords only has 6 health, has the baseline health, it hasn't increased it in any way. The first time one of those gets hit by, we'll say, the Dragon Zord, because somebody else has the control of the flute, that the Dragon Zord's tail does 12. Cyclopsis's front, his eye laser, I think, does 9 to a single target. That will just eliminate a Zord. You just gone. And that's when you look at somebody and say, this is why you go into Megaform. Yes, you have way more actions, and yes, you can do 2 points of damage, 2 points of damage, 2 points of damage multiple times based off of your die rolls. But that big critter just knocked out one of your friends in a hit.
Yeah.
And also, one of the big things to try and get people into their Zords and eventually into their Megazords is not just thematic. I mean, a lot of players are going to want to because it's giant robots. I want to get in the giant robot.
Yeah.
Is remembering that area of effect, because a lot of people were like, well, yeah, if I stay tiny, I'm super hard to hit by this giant guy. That's true until he does the 30 by 30 missile barrage, and then he's not targeting you individually. He's targeting 4 of you at a gigantic square, so he has no downshift.
Yeah.
And now all of you take 4 damage. Wait, what? Well, how was that? Well, you decided not to get into your machines against a 50-foot tall monster with a rocket launcher. So I won't say that sometimes they need to to be reminded why, but I think that's probably, and this goes honestly into D&D, it goes into Call of Cthulhu, it goes into any other game, is that if the players are not being challenged at all and they're just walking through everything, they will never learn to change up and try some of these other things. Like if they're like, yeah, I'll just, there's the one guy on the Ranger Discord that was talking about how his Red Ranger has like 24 armor and does like 6 damage a round constantly, and he can do that for like 3 rounds where he runs out of power or whatever. And that's fine. That's kind of badass to have a, you know, that's like your super tough, scary dude. But I guarantee the first time he gets into a fight and misses with one of those swings, and then the return swing is, all right, take 4 that ignores armor. He's going to say, wait, what? Well, I guess I'm unconscious. Well, yeah, because you put everything into offense and you have nothing to you should have been jumping in your giant robot who has 6 more ablative health, or eventually getting into the mega form that I know a lot of people had issues with the damage division for mega forms, for combined forms. But unless someone is really swinging massive amounts of damage, it ends up working in their favor.
Yeah.
Just because it does split things up for those big hits, those 4 or 5 damage hits. Now everybody's only taking 1, whereas if you guys were individually, that would have knocked somebody out. So I don't know. Did that help at all? Talking about
it did. I'm gonna pick up on something at the end there. I'm gonna skip a question to go to a different question. Because one of the others I'd got written down is about building a threat so that it appears both beatable and unbeatable at the same time. And that was my interpretation of the system. And I think this is going off something I think you've said before, is this is about being heroes. This is about being the good guys. I appreciate my players for the fact that I've never really had to encourage them to be the good guys or to defend the people or do anything. They have always been like, bad things are happening. We're the Power Rangers.
That's good.
Off we go to do it. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I'm so proud of all of you guys. You're the best. And that's great. But the point of combat and everything like that is almost like, at the moment, early levels just said, well, we're ramping everything up as we go. So first level was about introducing things. Second level is about completing everything. Third level onwards. Now things are going to get more interesting once we get there. But it is always very much like if we're building this based on the show, 9 times out of 10, what happens in the show is there's plot exposition and stuff like that. Monster grows, Megazord smash, funny bit at the end, Power Rangers win. And I never want to get away from that. I never want to. I always hate the stories. I'm always nervous about getting into that thing of it's the DM versus the players. It is absolutely never that from my point of view. It's always everyone working together to have a good time. And me having a good time is a lot of the time at the moment putting something in front of them that is not easy for them to smash, but is beatable, because then the heroes have won and the heroes have saved the day.
Absolutely.
What's the advice? What are the options? What would you do in terms of giving it that kind of sense of this is something that on the outside appears unbeatable and you're going to have a challenge with it, but at the same time it isn't unbeatable and you can win in the end. You've just got to think around it.
Two big things. One of the biggest things, and people forget this all the time. I've talked to so many players and game masters, and I'll be like, hey, don't forget you can do this. And they're like, oh my God. Spending the story point for +5 defense is massive. Because as a player, it's a way for you to, at a low health system, not get knocked out in a single hit. But as far as the threats are concerned, as a GM, you don't have to tell your players that you're spending a story point. I mean, you can just basically kind of mark it off, and his defense goes from 16 to 21, and suddenly, you can narrate that as, he puts his arms up and it rattles off of his, heavily armored forearms or whatever, and then make your players start to think about, well, okay, are there any weak points? Can I, basically do one almost like cinematic impossible, not I don't say impossible to her, but like a cinematic defense that makes them think, oh, we have to actually study this guy a little bit. We got to figure it out. Or you can just straight up call for it and go, hey, does anybody want to make an alertness investigation check to see if there's anything special about this guy? And it is one of the things that the Transformers actually has going for it, is the analyst focus has the ability, like it's cooked into their thing that says, you know, they can actually take an action to go, what's that guy's weak point? So they got a leg up, because the thing that I normally try and urge players to do in a game that's this kind of cinematic, they actually have just a power that says I can do it. I think in a Power Rangers game, I would probably, after maybe one round, maybe on the first round, or maybe when the monster gets introduced, you ham up the fact that, you know, it looks, you know, all of you, I mean, you can even have them roll, and your monster shows up, you say, okay, everybody roll alertness. And whoever rolls the highest, you go, you are positive that this guy is, you know, you're overwhelmed, or maybe the one person who rolls the worst, you know, you are overwhelmed by the fact that this guy looks like, you know, you would need like the National Guard to bring this guy down, you know, just ham it up. And when they swing, you spend your story points, so that way he seems a little tougher than he is. And then when things get to that point where you do want the battle to start to sway for the purposes of the heroes, that's when, you know, you have the, especially in Power Rangers, you've got the best motivational tool in the mentors, in the Zordons, in the Alphas, in the circuits, because you as a game master at any time can just basically, you know, at the top of the round, all of your guys' communicators go off, and Zordon says, you know, stay away from Shell Shock's, you know, don't look at him when the red light is appearing, you know, or whatever. You can give them that hint if they're having a hard time, or you can give them the, what's up?
Sorry.
No sorries.
Red light. Something you just said that just gave me an idea for something.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure I wrote it down. Sorry.
But yeah, so basically you have the benefit, and it is actually one of the things that I think any of these licenses you can use. You know, G.I. Joe, they can always get a call from one of their superior officers, or it's a little harder to do in G.I. Joe because they're probably in like some, you know, deep, dank, you know, far away place. It's not likely that Dial Tone's just going to be watching them.
You are in a pit. You can receive no communications in or out, except for when the plot demands that you're given something that will help you in combat.
Exactly. At least with Power Rangers, we actually have we have canon examples of the helpers chiming in and saying, you know, hit him with electricity. You know, his body's made of water. You know, if you can always help him. And if you feel like your players would get upset by just handing them stuff like that, then you just remind them that they can always spend a story point to get a clue about something.
Yeah.
You could just one of those, hey, I know you might not want to ask for help, but it's there if you need it. You know, one of the other things, you'll see this with some of the future threats that are going to come out. There are a handful of them that have basically ablative wounds, where it's maybe the first time that they get hit every round, they suffer no damage. That's a thing that will happen. Just as a side note, there will be threats that have that. There are some that have a lesser version that's you know, the first non-elemental source of damage that hits them is halved. You know, basically ways to mitigate some of that initial stuff, especially if you are waiting to get to your mega form, if they don't feel like spending the story point to just make something cool like that happen. You know, it gives the monster a little more longevity at the beginning of the combat, and then that stuff, you know, more often than not, the guys that have that kind of perk, something that's really damage absorption or something along those lines, will probably have a hang up that gets around it.
Yeah.
For instance, I think the giant version of Lightning Bot, I think the grown version of Lightning Bot has some damage mitigation, but unless you hit him with anything that is related to water in any way. Like it doesn't necessarily, you don't need to have like the SPD water cannon, but like if someone said, hey, I'm going to use this fire hose that's on the side of the wall and spray him while you guys are attacking him, I would count that. I would say, even though the hose isn't doing any damage, you're absolutely playing in on that hang up. You just try and get your players to think a little deeper into things. And again, as more, right now, there are such a limited number of threats that are in existence that aren't fan made. There will be a lot of people that when Adventures in Angel Grove comes out, that first book, there are a ton of threats that people will be able to use in their home games.
Yeah.
They'll see this, and it'll also give people a good idea of what to expect with some of the other threats that come down the line.
Yeah, I think my first or second game, I think I had my Rangers interact with a Goldar, which we don't have the stats for yet. So this was one that I'd come up with myself, who had no stats, because he isn't you're going to fight him and defeat him. He is an obstacle that you just need to go through. And I think after 3 or 4 hits on him, I think our blue was like, can I scan him? And is there a weak point or something in there? And kind of the scan basically came back with a description of he has P10T armor, plot armor.
Okay.
Which I wish I
was like, I thought he just had gold alchemical armor. I was like, I'm trying to remember, like, what is that all about?
Which annoyingly, I described it in person, and then as soon as we hung up on the call, I was like, P10T armor. That would have been really good to have used in game. Shoot. So I've got that for another day just in case. And again, it was one of those things of just like getting them to think about this wasn't a combat thing. This was a puzzle. This was you need to outlast this, because as we've already done this now, it wasn't you need to find a way to hit him. It was just you just need to hit him a set number of times and then he'll leave. And then that was where it was going. And I suppose maybe it's just building more stuff you're right, building more stuff like that into it, building those things.
Yeah, and part of the weakness right now is that there is just such a lack of material that, from my side of the curtain, I see this and I have a list of 500 threats that we've created in manuscripts. And I go, there's a ton of stuff. And then I go, oh wait, but you guys have really only seen 30.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an issue, and as things, come out more, we'll see. I think it might be fun to grab a Decepticon and maybe not necessarily use them as a Decepticon. Like, don't be like, okay, here is Thundercracker, but you could make it into a giant bird robot thing that they're fighting and use all the same stats, and it would work just fine.
There was so when I got the Transformers RPG, I was looking through the threats and everything like that, and got to Megatron and looked at that and was like, there are several elements here that very much fit my idea of what Lord Zed would be. Maybe I'll just use this for Lord Zed, and we might get a Lord Zed and he might have all of this stuff, or I might go with that. But and again, kind of going back to what we were talking about kind of towards the beginning, that pick this from here, this from here, this from here, the buffet, TTRPG buffet that this presents you is great. It gives you options from there. And that leads us into the question that I skipped over, which was merging the universes. Is there anything to be aware of when sticking them together? And this was very much this isn't a question for me. This is a question for
the masses.
Yeah.
So the absolute biggest thing, no pun intended, is you got to keep that size table nearby. And so the size variation for skills, the upshifts and downshifts based off of what it is. It was not described. It's only found in the combat section of the books, and it really should apply to anything where size matters. So in the case of like infiltrating, if you are this big and you're trying to sneak past somebody who's 50 feet tall, they should have that penalty to their alertness check. They should, or whatever you're setting your difficulty as for your infiltrate, you should get your upshifts. And maybe not both, but like one or the other.
Yeah.
And because it should be harder for them to notice that ant running past their feet if they're, in a conversation with another 50-foot tall monster. And same thing goes with like the actual combats themselves. Is you've got to remember that the bigger guys might have more health, they might have guns that do more damage, things like that, but they are supposed to be having a harder time to hit you. And if people forget that table exists, because I have watched one instance on someone's stream where I wanted to like yell, like text them and be like, there's you're 2 sizes too big, he should be having a hard time with this, and they just weren't. They were just using regular dice rolls, regular skills, and that's going to be a big factor when people start doing real crossover games, is because that's really the way, the reason why going into Megaform, or if you're a monolith transformer that is 30 feet tall as a standard, you have penalties. It's just, it is what it is. It's also the reason why those characters, probably those bigger monsters, they should try and lean towards, instead of upping their damage with their upgrades, is upping the area that they're hitting. So they're hitting things more often, but not necessarily for a bazillion damage. Mm-hmm. The other big thing is that you got to squint a little bit on some of the wording. If something says, for instance, the blue, I think it's the Blue Ranger Spectrum that can recharge things, basically can pass grid energy. It doesn't explicitly say so, but that totally means that guy should be able to replace people's energon points. Like that simply makes sense.
Yeah.
We couldn't put that as an example because it's not a Transformers book. Yeah. But things that are like, weapons that might take energy or personal power to power something. If you've got a Transformer on the team, let him spend energon. Let him blow an energon to do that same thing. But the biggest thing when it comes to crossovers, in my opinion, is to remember that Transformers are not alive. I mean, they're alive, but they're mechanoids and not organic. Mm-hmm. Because if you are building your adventure on the concept of a crossover, and it has something like a raging river between you and the thing, in a D&D game or a G.I. Joe game or even a Power Rangers game to a certain degree, they're going to have to figure out how to cross that.
Yeah.
They're going to need to figure out, can we jump? Can we fly? Can we do all these things? Do I try to swim it? And no matter what Cybertronian it is, he goes, I walk.
Yeah.
Unless you put something in the water that's dangerous, which is hard to do because most rivers aren't going to harm a 20-foot tall robot.
No.
You have to remember that they can do that. If you are playing Power Rangers in space and you have a Transformer that's visiting you, explosive decompression and being in a vacuum, not a big scary factor for them. That Cybertronian goes, hey guys, get in the airlock, I'll handle this. And so something that might be a big moment while the place is venting, and he just goes, guys, get to safety, I'll handle this part.
Everyone chill.
Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah. So you have to remember that there is just biological differences. If you bring a Transformer to like a G.I. Joe adventure, and maybe one of the bad guys is doing a bunch of poison, stuff like that. Most regular poisons don't work on a Cybertronian.
No.
But there's nothing that you could say that, you could say, well, this particular poison is it's also a contact acid, it works on a molecular level, or you can always kind of work your way around it.
Dr. Mindbender doesn't know what this is. It could have differing reactions in different things, and then roll with it, I assume.
Exactly. But and then the other big thing is, because you're mixing genres, you have to remember that Power Ranger is going to want to eventually get to his Zord. Maybe not, because it's not going to be a team full of Power Rangers. He might not want to get to all the way to Megazord. He's probably not going to spend, if he knows he's in a crossover event and you see one of your players spending perks and powers on stuff that's Megaform based, you might want to go give him a whisper in the ear and go, hey, just as a side note, your Megaform at best, there's only 3 of you guys that are Power Rangers. It's not going to be that big, so keep in mind that you may want to spend those resources elsewhere. Just like anytime that you've got honestly any Essence 20 character, in my opinion, except some GI Joes, having some driving is just always good. Transformers turn into their vehicles, but you are still driving, you are still flying, and that's where your skills when it comes to ramming and stuff. Someone in one of the Discords was talking about this superior amount of damage they can do when they ram, and I asked them how high is their guy's driving skill. D2. It's like, you're right, you will be able to do copious amounts of damage, but you are going to never connect half the time.
The age-old Discord rule: if it succeeds.
Rule number 2, redacted. The biggest thing I think for crossovers, until we potentially spell out some specifics about crossovers, is each player needs to remember, they don't need to know necessarily what everybody else can do, but they need to remember that everybody can do certain things, and that if that particular thing steals the show, that it's no like skin off their nose. It's not like, ha ha, I don't have to breathe. It's just, that's something that their guy can do right now, and maybe next session there'll be a situation where that guy can't go where you want to go. Like literally, he can't fit in the sewer tunnel because he's 20 feet tall. It's actually one of the reasons why I fought real hard to make sure that the Hollow Matter avatars were limited, because I think that that's one of the biggest narrative drawbacks to being a Cybertronian. Is that you're a big ass robot. And unless you're playing one of the smaller ones, which the smaller ones have less health and they've got their own things involved, but I always thought that it kind of belittled the whole robots in disguise aspect when you're not really a robot anymore. You're just you're hard light.
You're just a dude walking around. But it's, and so just dwelling on the system itself again for a little bit, it's one of the things I like most about it. It is that, and people sit on the other side of this as well, and they are completely valid in their opinion, but on my side of the fence is pick the things you have decided you're going to be good at, and they're the things you do. Or you can be a little bit good in a lot of stuff, but you can't be like, I always think min-maxing is always a negative term, but you can't have that. It's not, you're not building, I am the chosen one, I am great at all, everything will fall before me, but I haven't got any acrobatics and I need that to go over this fence. It is that sense of I'm good at these things. And again, one of the things I love about my team of Rangers, they've all got their specialities, they've all got their bits that they like to do, and so it's great putting in it, okay, here's a thing for blue, here's a thing for yellow, here's a thing for pink, all of those kinds of bits and pieces, because that fits what the characters are, and it's great.
Excellent.
All right, as the sun is coming down behind me, last question.
Yeah, we can try and wrap this up.
Okay.
As
So
the sun goes down behind me.
yes, as I get whiter off the screen. So all it was skills and tips for players. Sorry, skills and tips for GMs when the players go off the path and how or if you bring them back. And kind of anecdotally, I think this one was set by the session we had on Monday, where they were going through sports teams tryouts, several of them, and I had an NPC that they'd met before who gave the 3 rangers that were taking part good luck cards. And when they were handing them out, they realized that pinks was pink and reds was red and yellows was yellow, because that to me was always happening, especially MMPR. Weirdly enough, Jason, all of Jason's stuff was always red, and all of Kimberly's stuff was always pink, and no one batted an eyelid at it. And I think it was Green made a point of the fact that, hang on a minute, these are in your ranger colors. And all of a sudden, they fixated on that a little bit and started to panic. Like, well, does she know? How is she connected? What does she know? What is this going to do? And I'm sat there watching all of this unfold, going, I know this was just a throwaway thing. What do I do here? And it eventually circled back to the end of the episode. They landed outside the juice bar, and Ernie, who they have met before as well, came out and was like, hey, did you guys get your good luck cards? And they're like, yeah. I said, oh, cool. Yeah, I helped her pick out because like pink was her favorite color. And Joe, who's our yellow, said, like, you're really like a yellow color. I was thinking this. And it was like, pulled that one out. And I suppose it is just kind of hints and tips in kind of what would you do in those kind of situations.
So I'll answer. I want to answer this in twofold. The first one is they actually totally side tangent. The part of the reason why that everyone dresses and tends to always be involved with the colors that they are. So the showrunners did it to remind kids who basically because once they get into the Saban footage, no one knows who anyone is. It's just voices. So it was a way for them to make color codes to remember for a young kid that this is the Red Ranger. That's the voice I need to attribute to Red Ranger. Yeah. And then so that way when it gets to the fighting things as all voiceovers, I hear Jason's voice and I know where that's coming from.
Yeah, I know what that looks like under the suit. So,
but in one of the IDW books, they make a sideways comment about the fact that they're always dressing. Why am I always dressing, or what was it? Why do I always find myself dressing in different shades of blue? And it was a Blue Ranger talking about it, and they make a throwaway comment that the grid helps shape your reality. That you have been chosen as a member you're a Blue Ranger. And that's why, while you are a Blue Ranger, the blue spectrum of grid reality leans your way. So you just find yourself picking blue things. Your car ends up being blue. The milkshake that Ernie hands you's got blueberries on it. It's just weird things that the Morphin Grid does to you. And it's the reason why when someone like Tommy changes colors like underwear, that what he does, now suddenly everything is white around him. Everything is, it has nothing to do with a personal preference. It's not, I just love being green. It is because the green spectrum of the Morphin Grid is leaning your way. And I thought that is one of the most elegant, simplistic answers for the realistic being is that we just really wanted kids not to forget who was what when we switched to the Japanese acrobats. I dug that. All right, but the in-game answer to that, the reality of that question, is sometimes if it's a minor thing, like if it's just a minor derailment, I'll just basically chalk up the rest of that session to we're chasing a subplot. Whatever that subplot might be, I don't need to get into, my stuff can wait till next session. Let's focus on what they want to, because again, as long as I can make it fun for me as behind the curtain, as long as they're having a good time, rock and roll. And maybe they think that Ernie's a changeling, like, he knows who we are. He bought us those cards, and then they go that route, and they'll get into a fun, question and answer session with Ernie that ends up him being, no, I liked those colors to match you guys. I don't know what you're talking about. And there'll always be that one guy that's like, no, I think he's lying. He's he definitely is. He's one of Rita's puppets. He's poisoning all the children with his milkshakes. And you can either lean into it and let them enjoy what's happening and just kind of chalk it up to, here's a fun subplot that they've created. Or if it is really just honestly like a complete derailment, like, you, especially in a Power Rangers game where you have the mentor that can kind of knock on their head and go, putties have just been seen in the whatchamacallit, the Botanical Garden. They're not going to ignore like a straight up neon sign, hey, something's happening. But if you don't want to be that heavy handed, you can also just almost kind of gloss it over. Like it's not, whatever has got their attention super hooked, you can just, almost get them to solve it. In an instance where it is literally just a goose chase where they have no clue what's up, you did the right thing. Ernie just said, no, I bought these cards because you like stuff and here you go. And then you just leave it at that, and let them walk right back to where they're supposed to go. You don't bait their hook any further if that's the direction you want to go. And then of course the other thing is sometimes a good derailment can create like an absolute awesome subplot. Like, I won't lie, there have been times where my players have said something and it's a complete, not even remotely what I had planned. It is not even close to true as far as what I've got written down, but damn, that was a cool idea. And I'll jot it down and go, okay. And then like 2 sessions later, reintroduce that or let them investigate their way. And it comes to that truth. That one player who came up with that random weird idea, he is like, oh my God, I was right. And then you just sort of nod and you just never let him know that he helped you invent that plot. It was always part of everything. You just figured it out. And my personal favorite is to lean into it, is just let them play in their playground and introduce them to new fun things along the way. But if it is really, really important, especially if it's time sensitive, like, they got distracted during a wildfire, or something, the news broadcast that there's this horrible thing happening and then they get sidetracked, then that's when you maybe have a second news, they run past another TV and the news broadcaster's like, where are the Power Rangers when we need them? Like you can absolutely, they can always go, we'll come back to this. And maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you can remind them the important factor. And then also another good way, especially if you've got players that are being truly obstinate and are just, they refuse to stay to the plot, they refuse to stick to things, is sometimes, and we've seen this in the show, so it's not you just being mean as a GM, is have them go up against somebody like Goldar, have them go up against Finster's newest creation, and they really have no chance of beating this thing, and then you just make sure that your defeated stat for them, whatever your defeated state is they wake up in the command center, or they wake up if let's say you were trying to get them to to the evil fortress. They wake up in the evil fortress, but in a cell that's being watched by 2 stupid buddies. Like you can absolutely lean into getting them back on track, but making it exciting and not just, all right, guys, you need to go save the fire. You need to save the wildfire. Be like, or Zordon lets them know the wildfire is getting really close to the pocket where the Sabretooth Zord is stashed. This could be very bad for everyone if that gets damaged. So forth and so on.
Yeah, I think the best example we've had of this, we were doing the session where the Green Ranger was going to find his unique weapon.
Okay.
And had split them out. So green and red were going to go and look at that. And I think everyone else was going to go and investigate mysterious people. And my expectation and what I had planned for was that they'd get out of school, contact Zordon and say, hey, Zordon, there's reports of mysterious people. Can you triangulate this for us? Or something like that. And I'd made the mistake of showing them the map of Angel Grove that we got. And they just opened the map and just went, okay, Department of Water and Power, that sounds like something they're doing. We'll go there. And again, I was sat there going, oh, nuts, what do I do now? But it was great because I had been scrambling to be like, red and green are going to take a while doing their kind of thing. How do I make it so everyone has a fair amount of time with everything? And that led us into they talked to a security guard at the Department of Water and Power who really liked the Power Rangers. It was really, he liked talking about that, and they got ushered out of there, and then they went somewhere else, and they eventually found 3 people who it could be, and they had to work out which one was which. And it was, being incredibly egotistical here, it was a fantastic bit of GM's work.
Yeah.
But it came out of nothing, and like you said, it literally was just, we're going to go and do this. Cool, let's see how this goes. So yeah, if that's the kind of thing we want to be doing, good.
Yeah. There's also it doesn't work so much in like published adventures, but like if you're making your own adventure or your own mission or whatnot, is unless something is absolutely tied to the location that it needs to be at, one of my favorite ways to bring people back in line, back onto the plot, is wherever they're going, I just move the next plot piece to there. Yep. Unless it's something that is, yes, you have to do this at this place because you don't have a centrifuge at the mall. I get that. But like if it's for just most plot stuff, like just kind of segmented things, you just change the backdrop. Instead of it being at the mall, it takes place in a soccer field. You guys are heading to the water and power plant? Cool. The putties that I was going to have you, or the putties that were going to ambush you at the botanical gardens, they're just going to ambush you at the mall, and we just keep going that same thing. You just have to make that mental note that the thing that talks about, plant life, that it's instead of it being the plant life of the botanical gardens, it's the potted plants in the mall. The goofy trees that they've got, to make things seem softer or whatever. I think that is the best, and obviously the biggest thing that I would say for any GM, number one tip, no matter what system, no matter anything at all, is you have to be flexible, because if you just stick to, here are my bullet points and this is what's going to happen, and this is your players will know, they'll know that they have no stake in what's happening aside from rolling dice, and that they don't get to help shape the story nearly as much because your story is written and this is how it's going to be. It is why I do believe that while I love written adventures and I like writing adventures, I am a much more comfortable person if I'm building my own stuff rather than running it out of a book. I generally would much rather run it out of my own book, so to speak. I'm still writing my cues and still writing my outlines and stuff, but it's not nearly as spelled out as it is in a published adventure. All right, your son, you are losing sunlight on your end of the world, and we've been at this a while, so we will let this go. I hope that was helpful, or that this was helpful for you.
It definitely was,
and I hope that it was helpful for you viewers as well. Please leave comments as to how you liked this this concept of talking to gamers and talking to other people on the show. And you'll see me here in just a few seconds when I tell you more stuff about the end of the video. But let's give James a rowdy goodbye and a chance to. Any final words before we click?
Buy Essence 20, buy everything, buy all of it, play it. It's really, really good. Trust me, I'm a man on the internet.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, James, and we will talk to you very, very soon.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, so that was cool. Obviously, I recorded that earlier, so I'm not going to play it off as, "Ooh, that just ended." We recorded it a day or two ago. But I think that went well. I liked it a lot. I very, very look forward to finding other people who are interested in having a Q&A with a gamer. And I plan on reaching out to some of the other socials and try and see if I can't do this at least once a month. And if I get a good response and a good subscriber bump in the process, maybe I'll do more than once. So please, please, please comment. Let me know what you think. I mean, if overwhelming the comments are like, yeah, that was fun, but not something I want to see all the time, or anything like that, please comment below. Let me know. Not to mention, it adds you to the September comment raffle. Awesome. I can't. I don't have much else to say for today other than that was fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, share, comment, subscribe. You know how it goes. Hit the little bell. More than anything, I do have to say, I am really interested in trying to grow the subscriber base for this, so we can start doing some more cool stuff. I actually had a couple of people, companies that I talked to at Gen Con, interested in potentially doing some unboxings and stuff here on the show, but they were hoping that I would get to a higher subscriber base before they started sending me important stuff. So please, please, please spread the word. If you know gamers and you're like, hey, you know, even if it's literally just they pop over here to ask questions, this is what it's all about. I need to get those numbers up, and that'll be a big help if people would spread the word. So, without further, let's get you back to the rest of your day. Stay safe, get vaccinated, get your boosters if you need them. Wear a mask in places that you need to. Wash your hands. I don't know. I've stopped saying that, but wash your hands, because not wash your hands is gross. But more than anything, smile. Leave every room you enter a little happier than when you got there, and play some games. See you in a week.